Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I thought a really cool way of making an educational video about feeder insects without just sitting here and talking about them would be to talk about the type of feeder insect that my animals are eating while they're eating them. So I'm going to come in with a voiceover, and in this video I'm going to talk about waxworms and tell you all the nutritional facts and different ways you can offer them and blah blah blah, while my reptiles and amphibians are eating them. I'm also going to do this with other insects like hornworms, dubia roaches, superworms, mealworms. As I always state in the beginning of feeding videos, a lot of my animals are rescues or have special needs of some kind. As in particular, this is my leopard geckos. A lot of them have neurological disorders or birth defects or both. And so if you notice anything a little bit wonky about them, I will indicate as such either in the audio clip or on the screen, but just keep that in mind. And with that, there's nothing else left to say except please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and away we go. So throughout this video, you're going to see a number of different species of mine eating waxworms. I have other animals that eat waxworms, but I wasn't able to get them on camera for one reason or another, and that includes my fire-bellied toads, my yellow-bellied toads, and my white tree frogs. So I just wanted to make that clear that those animals can eat waxworms. I just couldn't get them on camera at the time. Waxworms are small, white, and sometimes this white can be like a yellowish white or a brownish white, but they are small white caterpillars. They are the larvae form of wax moths, and wax moths are small brownish gray moths. So they start out as this, and then they pupate and they kind of look like little alien shells, and then they turn into moths. When you get them in the mail, they will look like this little grubby form. They will come as a worm. If you have any that have started to turn and they're in that brown shell where they are pupating into a moth, if you get them like that, you can still feed them, and you can actually still feed the moth as well. It just might not be as enticing for your animal depending on the species. And also you might not want to feed moths, you might just want to feed the waxworms. So that's something to keep in mind. But typically when you get them either from a pet store or in the mail from your preferred online feeder insect supplier, then they should pretty much always come as a waxworm. And 9 times out of 10, the waxworms that you get will not have pupated and not turned into moths. When you get them in the container they come in, they're going to be in a burrowing medium, and sometimes you might have noticed that they have spun little webs in this burrowing medium. That's okay, just break up the webs. The waxworms will still be in there. They can still be fed even if they're doing some webbing in the substrate. If you keep them above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, they will survive and go through the process of pupating over time. If you keep them below 60 degrees, it will slow their life cycle. And if you keep them too cold, like for example, you can't keep them in the refrigerator because they'll die that way. A dead waxworm is like kind of deflated looking or floppy. It's really dark brown or black. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's dead, but if you're a first-time waxworm offerer, maybe you'll be confused at like a pupated one or one that is dead, so I figured I should make that distinction. Now, if you're the kind of person who wants to feed the waxworms and raise them so you can breed them, I can't offer much in the way of knowledge of that. I don't breed my waxworms, I just buy them because I feed them so seldomly, and we'll get to that in a minute, but I feed them so seldomly that I don't have like the need to breed them. However, if you do want to feed your waxworms and, make them pupate and turn into moths and then breed them, you will have to feed them a mixture of oat bran and honey, though you'll have to do a lot more research on your own about that because, like I said, I don't have that experience. Alright, now let's talk about their nutritional facts. So these are pretty close. I mean, if you're looking up nutritional facts for insects, there might be like 0.3 or 0.4 off, depending on what site you're looking at, but this is pretty standard. So they have 62.6% moisture, 20.4% fat, 15.8% protein, 0.8% ash, and then when it comes to the calcium to phosphorus ratio, this is not done in a percentage, they just give you the milligram amount. And waxworms have 283 milligrams of calcium to 2,161 of phosphorus. The calcium to phosphorus ratio is one of the most important things to look at when you are offering a feeder insect. A lot of the feeder insects that we offer have a bad calcium to phosphorus ratio, which means that there's more phosphorus than we'd like when there should be more calcium. And so that is why we dust feeder insects with calcium. It is to make up for this difference in phosphorus and calcium ratio. And waxworms are no exception to this rule. Waxworms need to be dusted every time that you offer them with a quality calcium plus D3 supplement and or a multivitamin depending on your schedule. Another aspect of their nutritional facts that's troubling is that they are super fatty. Waxworms are known in the community as like a junk food or a treat for leopard geckos and for other species, and this is because they have such a high fat content. So when you offer waxworms, as I said earlier, do so seldomly. Do so as a treat instead of a staple dietary insect. So when you are offering them, you can offer them like once a month, or you can even offer them less if you wanted. I personally offer them once a month. And like you've seen throughout this video, you only want to offer a couple waxworms at a time. Again, because these are super fatty. Now, another reason why you want to be careful about how much you offer waxworms is because of something called waxworm addiction. And I've seen this very commonly in leopard geckos. I'm sure it can happen in other species. But I personally have experience with it because of Arya. When I got Arya, she was addicted to waxworms, and it took literally months to break her of this waxworm addiction and get her to eat something else. So waxworm addiction occurs when a gecko is being food picky and they don't want to eat anything but waxworms. And because the owner is typically like scared of the gecko not eating, they'll just keep offering waxworms and keep rewarding that behavior, and then the gecko will only want waxworms. So anytime you offer something else that is like more significant nutritionally speaking, they will reject it, and then the person will get worried and offer waxworms again. It's a cycle that you have to break. You absolutely cannot allow your gecko to only eat waxworms, or any pet you have to only eat waxworms. And like I said, it can take months to get them to break this addiction. Hopefully, if you have a gecko with waxworm addiction, whether it be because it was a rescue or because you didn't know about waxworm addiction, hopefully your animal doesn't take months to break this habit. However, it definitely can take that long. Now, I want to be clear that this food addiction to waxworms, this food preference or food pickiness, can actually occur with all kinds of foods. I've seen it happen with superworms, I've seen it happen with mealworms, and it's really best to offer your pet a varied diet. You want to offer many different kinds of feeder insects throughout their lifespan and like throughout the year and throughout their diet, because it will give them the best nutrition. It will also give them more enrichment. It will also help avoid food pickiness because they're more willing to accept different options. So I really recommend including waxworms as a part of this varied diet. Just keep in mind you only want to offer them as a treat, so like once a month is fine. Now, if you are of the mindset that you want your gecko to grow faster, you want your gecko to put weight on faster, you have a gecko who's ovulating or egg laying and you want them to put on weight faster, if you want your gecko to put on weight, just keep in mind that if you do so with waxworms, it can facilitate waxworm addiction. And I really don't recommend just offering waxworms to like bulk up your gecko, because obesity is not cute. It's not a cute little chunker. Obesity is not good for our pets, and we are responsible for feeding them a good diet, and waxworms really should not be something that you rely on to beef up your animal. You could just increase the amount of feedings that you're offering to your pet, and you can throw in an occasional waxworm to that. But if you just offer more dubia roaches, more crickets, more mealworms, more superworms, if you offer more insects, then your animal will put on more weight. You don't have to do it by just offering waxworms. Just a little tip. Now, there's a couple different ways you can offer waxworms to your pet. You can do so with tongs, like you see me doing here. You could also put them in a bowl and offer them so that the animal can come out whenever they want, especially if it's an animal that's not fond of interacting. That's a really great method. And then another way you can do it, and this is probably the most enriching way, is to put the insect down in front of your pet and then watch your pet eat it. Of course, you don't just want to leave, but let it wriggle around in front of your animal, and then of course they can get a little bit of hunting instinct in on that. But just make sure that your animal actually eats the food. A lot of times if you just leave, the animal could like miss the insect, it could wriggle away, whatever. With waxworms, it's not so much of a concern because they move so slow, but you just want to make sure your pet is actually eating the food you're offering. There's two more things I want to address. One is where you can get waxworms. I personally get mine from Josh's Frogs, but they are available in pet stores. They're available on online pet stores or places where you can buy feeders. Waxworms are very readily available. And two, make sure that whether or not you have waxworms or pupa or whether or not you have wax moths, that these animals do not go outside. Like, you do not want to release them. So say you have one pupate into a moth, for example. You do not want that moth to be released into nature. That is harmful for the environment. So if you end up having a moth or a pupa alive and you like don't want to feed it off to your pet, then you're going to have to freeze it so that it passes away, and then you want to discard it. That is just the safest way to go about it. And now my dog is barking outside. But that's all I have to say about waxworms, and let's go to the outro. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing my animals eat waxworms. If you did, leave a like. If you didn't, you can leave a dislike, but I mean, why would you want to? I'm just saying, why would you want to? Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!